Before we jump into the rules, this is a player board. There's several different sections on this board. Each section is an action and will allow you to allocate certain types of dice results to it. You can see on the left there's an attack, that takes the spear icons, a defense on the right, that takes shield icons, a heal up the top which takes heart icons, and a movement down the bottom which takes feet icons. There's also a section in the middle called the innate action, which is specific to each particular tribe chief, and that normally will take the special result. Okay, so you can see here we've got our arena board. It's marked by a series of hexes. We've got our starting spaces, tinted in colour around the edge there, and we've got 6 spaces around the centre there that are impassable terrain. You cannot go into or through those hexes unless you have an ability that lets you do so. Let's have a look at our models. On our figures there, we've got 3 arrows. Those arrows indicate your forward facing. So this one's pointing here, here, and here. Those are our forward facing spaces. The sides that don't have any arrows are our rear facing hexes. Okay? The long and the short of it is, if you can see someone in one of those adjacent spaces in your forward facing, you can attack them, and if they attack you, you can defend against them. Okay? If Riparian was back here, I can't attack him because he's not in my front facing, and if he attacks me, I can't defend against him. Okay? So, basically the crux of the game, we'll get to in a second with the dice rolling. Just want to explain movement as well. When you're moving through the arena, okay, you can move in any direction, okay? It doesn't matter, you can move backwards, forwards, sideways, whatever it is, as long as it's 1 hex at a time. And generally when you do your movement, you're going to either move 1 space or change your facing by 1 side, okay? And we heard before why facing is important. So I'll give you an example of rolling and re-rolling our dice. We can do that as often as we want, as fast as we want. We don't have to wait for anyone else. After each roll of the dice, we can choose to allocate any of those dice to our board or our cards. And then any dice that aren't allocated have to be re-rolled. Okay? So I'll give you an example of that. Just roll. I'll take one of those. I really want movement from where I am now. Ironically, I'm probably not going to get much. Couple. Cool. So now I don't have to allocate all of my dice yet. Okay, I can call out actions at any point in time. So I might call out movement 2. So movement 2. Okay, take those dice back. They come back to my dice pool. I continue rolling. Okay, let's say for example I've ended up prematurely allocating 4 spear thrust here, and I'm still 2 or 3 spaces away from Hydrus. Okay. And I'm having trouble rolling 1 dice to try and get a movement, okay? At any point in time, I can pull any of those dice off the board for free, at no penalty, to then add them back to my dice pool, okay? So I might choose to pull another 2 off. I've got 3 to allocate with movement, okay? All right, perfect. So I might go movement 2. Notice that I've got 3 there, but I've only called movement 2. Movement 2, okay? Take my 2 dice off. Then I can go spear thrust 2 on Hydrus. Okay, that's a 2 dice attack, which means for each die I have used, okay, that's going to do 1 damage unless they can block it. Now Hydrus, for the purpose of this game, isn't being played by anyone and has no defense. So that character would have to take 2 of its health tokens and put it in my victory cup. Okay, and then I take my spear thrust away, and I might go movement 1, get out of his range, and continue rolling. Okay, now let's go back to that example, and let's say for example that Hydrus player had 2 defense, and remembering that 2 defense is the minimum that they have to have allocated to their parry move to be able to trigger it because of those floral circles there. Okay, so I've moved in from before and I've gone spear thrust 2. Hydrus can then call out
parry 2.
Okay, which means they would then remove those, and that damage is blocked. 1 damage is blocked for each shield. Okay, if I had gone Spear Thrust 3 on Hydrus, they can still do a parry, so they can still call out
Parry 2.
but then they would remove those dice, and any excess damage that's done, which would be 1, would come into my victory card. Okay, that's really, really easy. There is also some damage that's unblockable, which means it can't be blocked even if you've got shields to do so. Conversely, if Hydrus was here and I was here, and even if Hydrus had their shields on, and I called Spear Thrust 3, I'm not in her forward facing, so she can't use those shields, so she would have to take all 3 of that damage and put it into my card. The other things to be aware of is you've got heal up the top there. If I was able to allocate the 3 hearts to my board, I could call heal, take those off, and I take 1 from the supply and add it to my life total there. If you decide to play the advanced game, which is the normal one that you would play after a few games, you'll come across these. They're tribal cards. On the back of the tribal card is the unready side, and you'll see that it has some spaces for a dragonfly symbol to be allocated. Okay, once you've allocated those symbols, you can then resolve that action by saying readying and whatever the card name is. You then remove the dice, flip the card over to its ready side, which looks like this. You'll see it has a new section to allocate dice to. Now, the majority of these take the special symbol. You can then allocate those to the card, and then once you resolve that card by calling it and removing those dice, ensuring that you have the minimum required number of dice that need to be allocated there, looking at those floral flourishes, you then carry out the action and unready the card, putting it back to its unready side. It's then available to use later in the game. Okay, so let's talk about some of the more advanced things. Now, you don't need to use these for your first few games. We recommend that you do use them when you're playing more regularly because they add so much to the game. But definitely for your first few games, it could be a bit too intense to use these, but feel free to try them out. So, you've got every tribe chief has an innate ability, which is unique to them, which gives you options to use. And then you've got your 3 band cards, so band 1, band 2, and band 3. These are all unique to the tribe members as well, and they introduce further options for your tribe member to use during the game. They increase in difficulty to use, but they also increase in effectiveness as well. Okay, so just like a normal actions, they're called out and resolved as usual. I'll give you an example of Chief Grublix here. So if I had 2 of these special symbols allocated to it, and let's say I had some defense on there as well, and Chief Riparian called out
Trident Stab 2.
Okay, we can see that I am in his forward facing, so he can do that. He's not in mine, so I couldn't normally block that. But if I call out my innate action here, I can go watch out. I can remove those, I can turn to face any direction, and then I can call my shield block 2, which would then block the dice. Okay, so that gives Chief Grublick a lot of flexibility. The other thing you can do is you can use your tribal cards. Okay, now these tribal cards use the dragonfly symbol to unlock. So these are currently unreadied. All right, to ready any of these, I need to allocate the right number of dragonfly symbols. Okay, and that's like the prepare symbol. So I can go unlocking leap. Okay, that now gives me an extra option. Okay, so for example, this one is you may move 2 spaces in a straight line 3 are forward facing. Ignore the contents of the first space you move through. Okay, so to be able to use that like normal, I'd have to allocate what it's asking for, and then I could call it out as normal. So I could go leap, move my figure, take my dice off, and because it's a tribal ability, I now have to move it to my unreadied side. I can use it again later, but I have to ready it first. That's essentially what you're going to do. So you can see that these start to become a little bit more difficult to use. So this one here, his Thunder Stomp, requires 3 dragonfly symbols to use or to ready. So I'd ready that, and then it requires, and you can see because of the floral flourishes there, it requires 4 eyes, 4 special symbols. And because of those 4 special symbols, and you only have 5 dice, it really limits your ability to move around while you've got that allocated. So timing is everything, and using these tribal cards might be a little bit more difficult than normal, but the payoff is huge. So if you can use them effectively, they're a really great addition to your arsenal. You might not use them all the time, but they're great to have up your sleeve. And that's essentially how you play Eye for an Eye.